The sun had barely crept through the blinds when I reached for the phone. There wasn't any ceremony in my movement, just quiet, practiced habit. I hadn't called Griselda in months, maybe longer. But I had a reason this time. I had picked up a scarf last week in Charleston. Green silk. The same shade we used to fight over when we were kids. It lay wrapped in a small box beside my coffee cup. I sat there for a while before making the call, not because I was nervous, more like I was trying to remember if this was a good idea. Then I told myself something foolish. Maybe this was the start of us being sisters again. I tapped her name and waited. When she picked up, there was no warmth in her voice. It was short, clipped, like she'd already decided I was interrupting something. I asked her straight, "So, when's the wedding?" Griselda chuckled lightly. "Oh, that. We got married yesterday. It was small. Only special people were invited." That's when my ears stopped working. Her words sat there like nails on the table. I didn't even know what to say. I looked down at the scarf box. My hands started shaking. I didn't drop it, didn't speak, didn't blink. I just stared at that ribbon, the little curl I'd tied to look presentable. She didn't explain, didn't offer anything. "It was beautiful," she said, as if reading from a script. "Very intimate. No drama." I remember thinking, was that supposed to make me feel better? I checked the date on my phone again. She wasn't joking. I ended the call. Quietly. No hang-up theatrics. No demanding answers. Just ended it. I sat at the kitchen table with that box in front of me. Stared at it like it was something toxic. Then I reached for my phone. My inbox was empty. No invite, no missed call, no accidental text. Nothing. I opened Facebook, then Instagram. There they were, photos I wasn't supposed to see. Griselda in white, hair done up like she was born with a stylist. My mother standing beside her like she'd just crowned royalty. My brother clapping in the background. And Griselda's voice in the caption, "Surrounded by the people who matter most." What stunned me wasn't that I wasn't there. It was how normal they looked without me. I scrolled until I stopped cold. One of the guests had posted a screen grab of Griselda's wedding message. A little quote, 3 sentences, pretty words about growth, family, and peace. It was my message. I had written it 2 weeks ago. A draft, still saved in my notes app. I never sent it. I had been working on what I'd say if I were ever asked to give a toast. And there it was, verbatim, under Griselda's name. I stared at my phone like it had just grown teeth. This wasn't just forgetting me, this was using me, without even the courtesy of acknowledgement. Later that afternoon, I opened the scarf box. I unwrapped it, held the silk in my hands. It was soft, lighter than air. For a second, I pictured her opening it, smiling like she used to when we were 12. Then I folded it up and put it back in the drawer, neatly, not angrily, not dramatically, just done. That night, I opened my laptop. The old folder sat there on my desktop. Estate Trust, Dad. I hadn't opened it since we finalized everything after he passed. I clicked it. The documents loaded slow, like they knew I wasn't ready. Line by line, I scanned each one. There it was. My name. Crossed out. Replaced by hers. It wasn't a strike-through. It was subtle. Quiet. The kind of change you only notice if you were watching. I had noticed once, a year ago. Asked Griselda about it, she'd laughed, said it was just legal wording. Back then, I believed her. Now, I don't know what I believe. I didn't cry. I sat at the table, screen glowing blue, scarf still in the drawer. And I said to myself, not out loud, just in my head, they didn't forget me. They erased me. And they thought I wouldn't notice. That scarf stayed in the drawer. I didn't move it after that first night. Didn't touch it. Just left it folded the way it had come from the store. Clean, soft, like it still carried the illusion I'd bought with it. For a few days, I tried to convince myself I had misunderstood. Maybe Griselda didn't mean it the way it came out. Maybe I had imagined how sharp it sounded. Only special people were invited. I played it back in my head again and again. Tried to hear it differently. Then, on a lazy Thursday afternoon, while cleaning out the cabinet in the hallway, I found an old red accordion folder from Dad's estate. Tucked in with some unopened bank mail and faded receipts, it had a label I recognized. His handwriting, all caps. Property, main house. Out of habit, I opened it. Inside were the original deed copies, printed hard, notarized. My name was there, clear as day. Co-heir. Second signatory. Then I remembered something from last fall. Griselda had sent me an email asking if she could streamline the documentation for refinancing purposes. I hadn't thought twice. Didn't even ask to see the new papers. I walked over to my desk and searched my inbox. There it was, a PDF dated just 2 months ago. I opened it and froze. My name was gone. Where I used to be listed as secondary owner, now there was only one name, hers. I sat back in the chair, slowly, not angry, not shocked, just cold. This wasn't about a wedding. This had been in motion long before that phone call. That night, I printed both versions of the deed, took a yellow highlighter and circled my name on the original, then drew a blank box over the new one. It wasn't legal training, it was muscle memory. Something in me needed to see the proof, not just read it. This isn't about forgetting, I muttered. It's about rewriting. The next day was my birthday. I'd sent an invitation to my mother and Griselda the week before. Nothing grand, just dinner at a small bistro I liked downtown. Table for 3. I booked it early, picked a corner spot near the window, brought the same scarf gift with me. I thought maybe they'd show up. Maybe someone would choose decency over distance. I sat down at 6. By 6:30, I had refolded the napkin twice, answered a meaningless call from a robocaller, and told the server I'd wait a bit longer. At 7, a message came through. A group text. So sorry. Totally forgot. Mom and I are catching a flight tonight for a conference. Next time? No apology. No acknowledgement of the occasion. Just next time. The server, a young man with kind eyes, brought over a complimentary dessert with a sparkler. I smiled. Not because I was grateful, but because it was the only thing I could do without crying. I thanked him, asked for the check, boxed the cake. Walking home, I passed our old neighborhood park. Funny thing, at 10 years old, Griselda had drawn me a picture of us holding hands under a big tree. She'd written, "You're my favorite person," in pink marker, spelled favorite wrong. I'd kept it for years. That night, walking by that same tree, I remembered it vividly. But for the first time, I wondered if I'd made more of that moment than she ever had. Maybe that version of Griselda, the one I'd built in my mind, never really existed. Maybe she had always been this person, and I'd just refused to see it. The hardest part isn't being left out. It's realizing you were never really in. Back home, I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding my phone. I typed a message to my mother. "Can we talk about the house? I found something." I stared at it for a minute, deleted it, then tried calling. Voicemail. I didn't leave one. I checked Facebook. My birthday post had 3 likes, 2 from coworkers, no comment from family. Not even a thumbs up. "When you're useful, they call," I whispered. "When you're hurt, they're busy." I opened another message, this one meant for Griselda. It just said, "Why?" I didn't send it. Instead, I opened my laptop, created a new Google Doc, named it Timeline of Estate Changes. I began listing everything: dates, names, signatories, version control. No emotion, just method. The scarf was still in the drawer. That night, I put it back in the same place. Gently. Let them think I'm quiet. Quiet people know where the files are. I wasn't angry yet. Not really. I was something else. Numb, maybe. That kind of quiet where everything inside you is moving, but nothing makes it to the surface. I needed to talk to someone who still remembered who I used to be. Not for pity, not even for help. Just to know I wasn't crazy. So I called Vesper Crowley. We hadn't spoken much since Dad passed. She used to be like a second sister. Handled most of the estate's documentation with me, even sat next to me through some of the early hearings. There was a time I trusted her more than anyone in the family. She always said, We're the ones who hold the glue. Everyone else just makes the mess. We met at a small cafe 2 blocks from the courthouse. It used to be our spot. Quiet corner, too much lemon in the water, and a waitress who never rushed anyone. Vesper smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked thinner, hair pulled tighter, phone always face down but close. When we hugged, her arms barely wrapped around my shoulders. We talked small, weather, her consulting work, a short joke about lawyers. Then I asked her about the estate. She glanced at her watch. Things got really messy after you stepped back, Aileen. I didn't want to get caught between you and Griselda. I didn't remember stepping back. She swirled her straw in the iced tea. I thought you'd moved on. I asked if she'd seen the final paperwork. She said she hadn't, then started fiddling with the chain around her neck, an old habit. She always did that when she wasn't telling the truth. I just want to understand what happened, I said. I can't get involved, she replied. She left 10 minutes later, saying she had a client call. I picked up the check, sat there looking at a salad I hadn't touched. The seat across from me stayed warm for maybe 30 seconds before it went cold again. On the walk back to the car, I replayed our childhood, slumber parties, birthday cards signed "Best Friend Forever," the summer we buried a time capsule behind the rosebush. Funny how people can carry your secrets for years and then leave them in the dirt the moment things get inconvenient. It doesn't take yelling to lose someone. Sometimes silence is louder. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I made a stop at Griselda's house. I told myself I was just dropping off a book for Zephyr, her son. He liked sci-fi, and I had found a first edition he'd once mentioned. That's all it was. Griselda wasn't home. The housekeeper let me in. Zephyr sat on the living room floor, headphones off one ear, controller in hand. He grinned when he saw me. "You came," he said. "Cool." We talked for a few minutes. I handed him the book. He flipped through it, said thanks, then looked up and said, "Mom says you're just being dramatic. That you don't matter in the will anyway." I didn't flinch, but everything inside me stopped. I smiled, soft. "Oh? Why would she say that?" He shrugged, kept playing. "She says you're not really part of the core family anymore, like you used to be, but you kinda went weird after Grandpa died." I sat down on the edge of the sofa, not to rest, just to steady myself. Kids don't invent this stuff. They repeat what they hear at dinner tables. I left shortly after. Hugged him, thanked the housekeeper, walked to my car on legs that didn't feel real. I sat in the driver's seat. Engine off, hands on the wheel, no music, no movement. They weren't just excluding me. They were rewriting me. I started to wonder how many others had already heard that version of the story. How many people now thought I was unstable, dramatic, difficult, just because it suited someone else's narrative. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out every box I had. Bank records, old statements, notarized copies of legal files. I spread them out, printed new ones, highlighted inconsistencies, circled dates, tabbed pages. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was preservation. I wasn't going to argue with them in family group chats. I wasn't going to send another message asking to be included. I was going to document everything. Quietly, relentlessly. I opened a new folder, named it Proof. Not for them. For me. Just before sunrise, I opened the drawer, took out the green scarf again, and placed it gently into my briefcase. By the window, I watched a single car roll past, headlights cutting across my wall like a silent apology. "If they've already decided I don't belong," I whispered to no one, "then I've got nothing left to protect." I clicked open a new note on my phone. Typed, "Find estate lawyer. Discreet. No family ties." I'd spent the weekend cross-referencing emails and legal documents until my eyes felt like paper. On Monday morning, I drove to the local newspaper office. Told the woman at the front desk I was researching a public article related to estate filings. She handed me a copy of Sunday's preview edition. Front page, The Pierce Legacy, 3 generations of community leaders. Big bold font, above the fold. Photos everywhere. I didn't see my name once. Griselda was pictured in 3 shots, standing with our mother, speaking at a fundraising gala, standing alone on the porch of our father's house like she'd built it herself. There was one group shot. Family gathered on the steps of the courthouse after the foundation was restructured. I knew that photo. I was in that photo. Or, I had been. Now, the left side of the image was cleanly trimmed. The space where I'd stood next to our father, gone. I stared at the layout. My stomach didn't drop. It tightened. Like I'd swallowed a breath that couldn't come out. They edited me out like I was a smudge. I left without saying much. On the drive back, I made a detour. There was a small print shop on Abercorn I used years ago, the kind that still remembers people. I walked in and asked the clerk, a guy with gray temples and a kind smile, if they had a backup of the original group shot from the courthouse. He tilted his head, thinking, then snapped his fingers. "Oh yeah, that one with the tall woman next to Mr. Pierce, right?" "That's the one," I said. He found it. The unedited version. There I was, right where I remembered, standing to the left of Dad, arm tucked around his elbow, smiling straight into the camera. He handed me a preview print. I didn't say anything, just stared at it for a long time. Then I said, "Can I get 2 copies? Glossy, one wallet-sized, one full." He didn't ask why. Proof that I existed, even when they pretend I didn't. Back home, I put the full-sized print on the fridge. The other went into the estate binder. That photo had been taken right after our final trustee vote. I remembered Griselda pulling me aside before it, asking me to remove the green scarf I had around my neck. Said it clashed with the rest of the family palette. I'd rolled my eyes, laughed, and took it off. That was the same scarf I'd planned to gift her, the one still folded in the drawer. I thought about that moment for a long time, how small it had felt then, like a simple color preference. Now I wondered if she'd been working on my removal for longer than I'd realized. That day marked something in my mind. A pivot. Truth wasn't just about what I remembered, it was about what I could prove. I called my mother. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Did you see the article in the paper?" I asked casually. "I did," she said. "It was very well written." Beautiful layout. "Did you notice anything missing?" A pause, then, like brushing lint off a coat. "I didn't make the selections, Aileen." That was worse than denial. It was complicity, without guilt. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her why. I didn't explain how it felt. I just said, "Okay," and ended the call. I spent the rest of the day on the floor of my office. Papers spread around me. I wasn't sorting them for legal proceedings yet. I was collecting omissions. Every time I hadn't been invited, every place my name had been left out, every board seat reassigned while I was on break, every email thread I hadn't been copied on. I wrote them down, one by one, labeled by date, posted a sticky note above my desk. You can't lose what you never truly had, but you can reclaim what's legally yours. No more text messages, no more trying to be included. This wasn't about feelings anymore. It was a case. By evening, I'd built a skeleton timeline of the trust's original terms, matched to my father's documents, all the gaps, all the swaps, all the deletions. Emotion didn't protect me, I said out loud to an empty room. Precision might. I closed my laptop and opened a glass of water, checked my phone. Something had popped up under the online version of the article. First comment. Isn't there a 3rd sibling? Or did I imagine her? 12 likes. Someone else replied. No, there was someone else. Wonder what happened? I didn't respond. Didn't need to. I took a screenshot, saved it to the folder marked Echoes. Some people still remember. That matters more than I thought. The cabinet in Dad's study hadn't been opened in over a year. I knew because the dust didn't lie. I knelt down in front of it with no real plan. I wasn't searching for anything. I was just checking, touching what was left. And that's when I found the envelope, yellowed, tucked behind a stack of old property tax records. The label said, Will, Final, Original Copy, Witnessed. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. I just opened it. Inside was the version I remembered. His handwriting still sharp, his signature still pressed deep into the page like he meant every stroke. And below it, the words, My daughter who asked for nothing. My name was first, not second, not also included. First, executor, primary heir. So I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't rewriting history in my head. They were. I took a deep breath. It didn't feel good, exactly. It felt like vindication wrapped in grief. Like finding an old coat you thought you lost, only to realize it never fit you right in the first place. I pulled up the digital copy Griselda had filed months after Dad's funeral. Her name was there, alone, no amendment form, no revision notice, just a slick new PDF with polished formatting and a timestamp that conveniently lined up with the week I'd been out of town, handling his memorial service in North Carolina. This wasn't an oversight, it was an overwrite. I lined up both versions, printed them side by side. Hers was clean, mine was real. Dad's original signature was notarized. The envelope had a postmark dated 2 days before he fell into his final coma. I didn't cry. I opened a new document, titled it, Legal Discrepancies. I didn't write anything in it yet, but I knew I would. By late afternoon, I was dialing Thane Morrissey, Dad's old attorney. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. He picked up after 3 rings. "Aileen," he said, like I'd never left. "You holding up?" "Barely," I said. "Thane, do you remember the final version of my father's will? The one with your name as executor?" "Yes." "Of course I remember. Your father was very clear. He trusted you to handle the estate. Were you involved in the newer version that was filed?" He paused, long enough for me to know the answer. "No. Griselda told me she had it handled. She said you were stepping back." I didn't reply. His voice shifted, went from warm to firm. "If you have that original copy, Aileen, don't lose it. It'll hold weight, especially if it's witnessed and dated." "It is. Then protect it like gold." I scanned it to my laptop, saved it to 2 external drives and a cloud account under a pseudonym. Then I printed 3 certified copies and sealed them into separate envelopes. One for a lawyer, one for a safe, one for whatever came next. Later that night, while checking some spam folders for a missing confirmation email, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. A chain titled, "Aileen, keep her out quietly." It was from Griselda, CC'd to our mother, and Vesper. I read it, then read it again. Lines like, "We need to monitor her moods. She's always been obsessive with fairness. She spiraled after Dad died. Don't antagonize her, just make space. Limit anything financial. Redirect if she asks too many questions." My eyes didn't blur. My jaw didn't clench. I just folded. This wasn't just cutting me out of papers. It was cutting me out of character. They were setting a narrative, not just to others, to each other. Building a case before I even knew I was on trial. I printed the email, filed it under the folder marked proof. I didn't call anyone, didn't demand answers, didn't send a response. I sat with it, let it rot in the silence they'd created for me. Then I opened a fresh document, statement of facts. I started typing. Calm, no adjectives, just dates, documents, witnesses, events. They'd made their case. Now I'd make mine. Not with pleading, not with shouting, with evidence. The scarf stayed untouched in the drawer. It didn't deserve this part of the story. Before bed, I booked a consultation with a probate attorney, used a different name, a referral from a friend who owed me nothing and liked it that way. Then I made a list, people who had been in the room when the original will was signed, notarized, witnessed. I outlined every change made after Dad's death, crossed them with emails, calendar entries, photos. This wasn't going to be a battle of volume, it was going to be a battle of precision. I wasn't supposed to see the email. A friend forwarded it to me out of courtesy, one of those small-town courtesies where people don't want to be in the middle of it, but still want you to know. The subject line read, Civic Awards Luncheon, Legacy Preservation Honor, Griselda Pierce. I stared at the screen for a long time. The award was for ongoing restoration of the Pierce family estate. The one I had paid for, planned, filed permits for, managed every contractor and invoice for over 2 years. The project I'd turned down a sabbatical for because Griselda said we needed to keep it in the family. The RSVP list was full. Mayor, council, donors, journalists. My name, not on it. I wasn't invited. Didn't matter. I found a way in anyway. A week later, I walked into the ballroom wearing black and beige. No colors, no statements. I sat in the back corner as someone else's guest, said hello to no one, watched everything. When they handed out the event programs, I opened mine halfway through my salad. There it was. My name, sort of. Elaine Fulton, assistant coordinator, retired, tucked under a footnote about the estate's early paperwork. Elaine, not Aileen. I blinked, read it twice, felt the air leave my lungs. Everyone around me kept eating, chatting, laughing. They hadn't noticed. Or maybe they had, and it didn't mean anything to them. I looked again at the list of contributors. Of course, I wasn't on that page either. But Griselda's name? 3 times. 1 quote. 2 credits. Someone behind me whispered, "Didn't their sister help with the house?" Another voice. Maybe she backed out. I didn't turn around. This wasn't a mistake. This was choreography. The lights dimmed. Music played. The MC introduced one of Savannah's most visionary women. Griselda walked up to the stage in a tailored suit, emerald green. The same shade as the scarf I'd folded back into the drawer after the wedding. She smiled like a pageant queen and began her speech. She spoke about women who preserve the soul of their families. She thanked our mother by name. She referenced early days of planning when no one believed this house could be saved. She used phrases like personal sacrifice and quiet dedication. And not once did she say mine. Every word was a theft. Smooth, graceful, pre-approved theft. And the crowd ate it up. I didn't move. My hands sat in my lap. My back stayed straight. I felt the burn crawl up my neck, but I kept still. She ended by saying, "Legacy isn't built by one moment. It's built by being there when it counts." They clapped like she'd solved world hunger. She hugged the mayor. She took photos with city council in front of the new branding banner, the banner I'd designed. In my purse, I had one of the certified copies of the original will, my name, Dad's signature, the works. I had brought it not to cause a scene, but because I wasn't sure what I might need, I considered it. Just for a second, I imagined walking up, pulling it from the envelope, holding it above my head like a final truth, saying, "That legacy you're selling? I built it." But I didn't. Not because I was afraid, because I was done performing. This crowd wasn't ready to listen. They were too busy clapping. Legacy isn't about who talks the loudest. It's about who leaves something that lasts. After the event, as people milled around the hallway, a woman tapped my shoulder. Former coworker. We'd done volunteer coordination for years before Griselda swooped in. "I thought you were the one behind this," she said, voice low. I didn't explain. I handed her my card. "Let's talk soon." That was all I needed. If even one person noticed the truth didn't match the stage lighting, that was a start. Back at home, I wrote a line on a notepad. Every performance has an audience. Some take notes. Then I opened a new file on my desktop. The day my name was rewritten. I listed everything, the misprinted program, the edited project credits, screenshots of her quotes, photos from the event, pulled from Facebook, tagged and time-stamped. I attached them all to a secure legal folder. Then I opened the old envelope again, the one with Dad's handwriting, folded it back into its sleeve. They wanted legacy. Let's make one they can't delete. The coffee shop on Barnard hadn't changed much. Same chipped tables, same smell of burnt espresso grounds. I met her there by accident, or maybe fate had a hand in it. An older woman from my father's old Rotary group. I recognized her immediately. She looked surprised to see me. She smiled the way people smile when they're trying to gauge how much you know. We made small talk. She asked how I was doing, what I was working on. I gave polite, vague answers. Then she leaned in just slightly and said, "We missed seeing you in the Pierce family segment last month. You were always so involved." I nodded. Took a breath before responding. "Oh, things changed." She tilted her head. "I always thought you were the architect behind that estate restoration." That one landed different. It wasn't a compliment. It was confirmation. Someone outside the family remembered. Someone saw. That hit harder than all the apologies I'd never get. Back home that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a calendar alert. I ignored it at first, but something pulled me back. It was set for Griselda's wedding, past event. I clicked it. One of those syncing glitches had brought over an old draft of a planning email. Curious, I clicked View Thread. My stomach tightened. It was a message chain between Griselda, our mother, and Vesper, sent weeks before the wedding. Floral designs, seating maps, timeline for the ceremony. Then I saw it. Our mother had written, Aileen would make it complicated. Better to leave her out quietly. That sentence didn't come from anger. It came from calculation, polite on the surface, surgical underneath. I read it 3 times. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had planned around my absence. The kind of exclusion that came dressed in soft language and subtle tones. I called my mother. She picked up quickly, like she always did when she didn't expect confrontation. I asked if she saw the article last week, the one where I'd been cropped out of history. She paused. Yes, it was very well written. Beautiful layout. I waited. She didn't mention my absence, so I brought up the email. Calmly. She denied it first, then stumbled, said, I didn't think you'd want to be there. I didn't let her off easy. Or did you not want me there? She sighed. It was simpler this way. You always make things too emotional. That was it. No yelling, no tears, just silence. Then I said, got it, and hung up. Not in rage, in clarity. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I was looking for documentation. That night, I cleared the living room wall, started pinning photos, copies of articles, printed emails, invoices. I connected omissions to events, public recognition to private removal. I named the file, what they didn't want in the record. I said it out loud to no one. Their story erases me. But facts have memory even when people don't. From that moment, my focus changed. I didn't want justice. I wanted accuracy. The next day, I stopped by the community center to drop off some old donation paperwork they'd been asking for. Same woman from the cafe was there. She smiled again, this time, different. You really were the backbone of that place, she said. Everyone knows it. I handed her a card. If anyone asks about the estate, I said, tell them what you remember. Not angry, not desperate, just clear. Truth doesn't need drama, it just needs witnesses. That night, I got a voicemail from Griselda. Her voice wasn't sharp this time. It was off. I heard you've been asking around. What exactly are you doing? I didn't call back. I texted her one sentence. Just documenting what happened. Should I be worried you're worried? Then I filed the voicemail with the rest, marked the date, and smiled, because fear had finally changed sides. It started with a text from Lisa, an old friend from my finance days. Channel 4, now. She's live. I didn't ask who, I already knew. I turned on the TV and there she was, seated across from a national anchor who didn't know she was interviewing a fraud. Griselda looked polished, camera ready, her hands folded perfectly in her lap like she'd been trained, and around her neck, my scarf, not one like it, mine. The green silk I'd folded and placed in a drawer months ago. The one I bought for her before I was uninvited to the wedding. Somehow, it had made its way around her throat, now acting as a soft backdrop to her lies. They talked legacy, empowerment, female leadership. She smiled as she dropped lines like, sometimes to grow, you have to leave certain people behind. And the host nodded. I didn't throw my mug. I didn't scream. I sat there, sipping coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, watching my work, my family's name, my trust, wrapped in a scarf on national television. She just put my name back on the record, I muttered to no one. She just doesn't know it yet. Later that day, I got a message from my backup attorney. A lien had shown up, filed against the Pierce property. 3 months ago, Griselda had used the estate as collateral for a private equity loan. Only, the estate wasn't hers alone, not legally, not financially, not by any stretch of Dad's will. No co-signature, no power of attorney, just an assumed full ownership filed under her name. She'd listed my share as inactive interest. Like I was dead, I didn't panic. I gathered everything. Dad's notarized will, the deed with dual signatures, the restoration invoices I'd covered personally. I stacked the pages on my kitchen counter like cards before a final hand. And I labeled the folder, Fraudulent Leverage, Exhibit 7A. That evening, Griselda broke her silence, texted me directly for the first time since the funeral. No matter how loud you get, you'll still just be the one who funded it, not the face of it. You're lucky I let that scarf shine. That's what she wrote. It wasn't even rage that hit me, just disgust. I replied with one emoji, a receipt, then typed, "You just put that scarf on camera. It'll look great in the evidence packet." I sent the thread to my attorney. Subject line, "Admission via arrogance." After dinner, I walked into the garage, opened the locked filing cabinet, and laid out every piece, documents, photos, timestamps, on the folding table I used when Dad and I used to sort tools. I set up my phone and began recording. Not for the courts, for the record. I spoke calmly, like I was giving a weather report. This is a statement of facts. I laid out the money trail, the ownership, the deceit. I showed screenshots, legal certificates, photos from the Civic Awards event, the scarf footage. "This is a legacy laundering operation," I said, "and I'm the laundry tag they tried to rip off." When I finished, I saved the video twice, one to a hard drive, one to an encrypted folder. Titled it, "Legacy, Defined by Truth." I looked at the scarf one last time before sealing it in a glass display box, labeling it, "Evidence, claimed as symbol." 2 days later, I got an email from Odette Velez, a local reporter who had covered the Civic Awards. She didn't waste time. "I know you were the real architect behind that estate. Want to talk?" I didn't hesitate long. "Only if you're ready to tell the story they've cropped for too long." I sent her a sample of my files, photos, timeline, quotes. A few hours later, she wrote back, "This isn't a family dispute. It's a cover-up. This story has teeth." For the first time in weeks, my hands were still. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't waiting. The next morning, I finalized everything. Video, legal notes, transcripts, evidence list. Saved it all under a new title. The Pierce Case, Controlled Release. Set it to email a lawyer, a journalist, and a notary if I didn't cancel the timer within 10 days, just in case. Then I looked at the scarf in the display box, wrote a note, "Let them wear it." And I ended my affidavit with a single line. "My name doesn't need to be said, it just needs to be signed." They told me it wouldn't go anywhere, that these kinds of cases don't end in resolutions, just in exhaustion. But the petition was accepted. The hearing would be closed to the public. No press, no recordings, just panel members, counsel, and paper. I didn't need a crowd. I needed facts, and I had them. That morning, I wore gray, simple blazer, black flats. No makeup beyond what would keep me from looking tired. Around my neck, a scarf, the other half of the set I'd bought before Griselda's wedding, the one I hadn't given her. I arrived 15 minutes early, sat at the end of the table, back straight, hands folded. Griselda walked in a few minutes later, flanked by a young attorney who looked like he was still learning to tie his tie. Our mother followed, not speaking. Her eyes met mine for half a second, then dropped. That was fine. I wasn't here for her anymore. I breathed once. Deep. This wasn't about being seen. I was here to be heard. The documents were presented in order. Original will, email threads, tax receipts, collateral filings. Every one of them stamped, dated, witnessed. Her attorney made a weak attempt, called them outdated, said there had been a natural shift in family structure. Thane didn't flinch. He quoted legal code, cited precedent, pointed to the video I'd brought. My father, in his voice, raspy but sharp, speaking directly to the camera. "I've chosen Eileen because she's the only one who never asked for it." Griselda shifted in her seat. The panel was quiet. One member asked, "Was your sister notified before these transactions took place?" Her lawyer mumbled. Griselda said nothing. And that silence, it was louder than anything else in the room. During a recess, as the attorneys stepped out to whisper in corners, Griselda leaned toward me. She didn't shout, didn't snarl. She smiled. "You were just the wallet. Always were. You just didn't know it. Her voice didn't crack. But the room did. A panel member turned and wrote something down. I didn't respond, not with a word. I didn't need to. That sentence bought me the kind of freedom no apology ever could. When they returned, the lead arbitrator looked at Griselda, then at me. Your tone today, Miss Pierce, indicates a consistent disregard for fiduciary duty. Based on the evidence presented, we find that Ms. Fulton's rights to the estate were improperly revoked. My legal rights were reinstated. Griselda would be required to submit any future decisions to third-party oversight. The moment they read the ruling aloud, our mother closed her folder. Didn't say a word. On her way out, she looked at me once, barely, and walked past like we were strangers on a sidewalk. I didn't stop her. There was nothing left to trade. I walked out of that office into the sun, not victorious, not gleeful, but whole. Odette Valles waited by a bench. She stood when she saw me, held a binder under her arm. "Got something for me?" she asked. I handed her a slim folder labeled "The Real Legacy, From Shadow to Voice." "Want a quote?" she added. I shook my head. Just the facts. Then paused. "Some people inherit property," I said. I inherited silence and turned it into evidence. She smiled, nothing performative, just a knowing kind of smile. I declined a full interview, told her to run the piece when she was ready. Later that week, I visited my father's grave, brought the scarf. I didn't make a speech. I didn't cry. I sat quietly, then slid the scarf and a copy of the court ruling into a waterproof envelope and buried it under the old oak tree behind his headstone. "I carried the weight," I whispered. "I return the rest." Months later, the launch of my foundation was small, deliberately so. No press, no speeches, no grand opening, just a quiet registration and a digital archive. A place for women like me, women erased by family, by silence, by rewritten names in documents they never saw. I never mentioned Griselda again, not in interviews, not in stories, not in defense, only in the lesson. Truth doesn't shout, it outlasts.